How can they all be getting stronger?
I needed answers, for this was truly horrific-sounding news. Carl Rim brought up a new image, this one wider, covering the vital statistics of all competitors.
Initially, with the exception of the humans running off on their own, the games proceeded exactly as planned. 3 eliminations occurred according to prospects. Although the Aquelians were an anomaly, it was within boundaries that they were attacked in the water by local wildlife. The first true anomaly, though, was with the humans. They ran for an hour, covering miles of terrain very quickly, and locating the bluff. Our assumptions at that point were that they would use the bluff as a base and begin to hunt other competitors, especially once they got access to the bow and arrows. This is where the first true deviation occurred. Instead of proceeding to play the game, they instead rooted down to the bluff and rapidly amassed food, shelter, and a source of water. Then Keith ran off to save the Rothani. In and of itself, it was not completely unexpected, choosing the path of just out-surviving the other teams. While it is easy to point at Keith, the true culprit of the anomaly is Valerie. She almost immediately started enacting a dietary regimen without discussion with Keith. They ratcheted up food production, as apparently the humans consume a far higher average amount of food per day, even more when they exert themselves. All the while, their musculature began to alter itself, tearing down and rebuilding itself, as you can see here.
On the display, the medical visual moved, sped up to demonstrate the process of the human musculature alterations. It was almost like the humans were continuously breaking their own bodies, only for their insane regenerative factor to heal it back, and the new growth was stronger than what had been broken.
Are we certain that the medical nanites have not malfunctioned and activated within humans? The repair rates seem similar.
She tilted her head.
We are certain they have not. In fact, the nanites within the humans are operating on the lowest power of all contestants. When we injected them, the immune system of the humans began fighting the nanites until the protocols adapted to their physiology. Had they not been able to, the nanites would have been wiped out by the immune system. Since that point, the nanites have been interfaced with the immune system, but it's a tenuous balance. The human capacity for self-healing is really rather extraordinary. We tested their regenerative factor with active nanites while we had them under sedation, and the regenerative factors of both humans increased exponentially. That is not present here.
I was shaking. Keith had been struck hard enough to eject him 10 feet through the air, contacting a thick tree at force and caused severe injuries that would have crippled any other species I had met. He had gotten up from it almost immediately, reset his shoulder, and murdered the creature that caused him the injuries. Certainly he had passed out, but according to the nanites, it was the sudden loss of the adrenaline chemical and not any of his particular injuries. But the fear put a thought into my mind.
Is there any chance that this is simply a mutation present in Keith and Val?
Kalrim again tilted her head.
None. The humans observing the moments of Keith and Valerie committing their absurd feats have not only shown no reaction to indicate this is an abnormality of the species, but monitoring their communications, our research teams have seen video of the humans on Earth explaining how they were done, or even making corrections to what they did. It's as if their entire species is taking notes and attempting to replicate and improve the results. It is not merely related to the physically extreme acts either. There are videos concerning Val's cooking, trying to replicate dishes, or explaining what she's making, and what could be improved with access to further ingredients. Keith's skills with breaking down his kills, his smokers, and the shelters themselves. Uncle Keith's survival hour even has what the humans call reaction videos to them, expanding on the principles that he's discussing, and discussions on his post-traumatic stress disorder. There are live streams of the games playing across the planet, with people doing live commentaries of things both as they happen, and extracted clips of particular moments, both those who are knowledgeable in these areas and those who are not. The entire species is going over every possible facet of what Keith and Val do in the games. They're even extrapolating the capacities of the other species, making comparisons to mythologies of Earth, both old and new, It pains me to say this, but some of their observations are ahead of our own, and those observations are not solely limited to the scientific communities. For instance, a number of humans have begun to engage in a thing they call shipping, a sort of exercise in guessing relationships, especially where Keith is concerned. They're all very excited, and while they were observing, were able to call Hoda's attraction to Keith before we got near to figuring it out ourselves. They have disagreements about his relationship with Marilla, some saying that there is attraction there, others claiming that it's more of a rivalry, and yet others saying it's a bit of both. They like Fionn for her, though this is a small minority. They're extrapolating every potential theory in real time, just to see if they can guess what comes next. Some of them are incredibly accurate, such as the predictions of the storm itself, which they worked out the true wind speeds of based solely on the video we showed of the storm from orbit, a video only 5 of their minutes in length.
I closed my eyes and laid my hand over my mouth and jaw as I breathed to calm my hearts.
What have our ambassadors had to say of the humans?
She produced another datapad from her case.
The ambassadors to the humans have reported that the humans have universally been exceptional hosts, affording them incredibly opulent lodgings, meetings with leaders, assign them guides for the world based on region, putting forth those most familiar with the local regions of the planet. The linguistics experts have started to learn our language, making translation devices less necessary. They have even been providing free materials for our transporters and other devices, rather than requiring them to requisition the materials through formal channels, which would be far more costly and take more time to get. They've raved endlessly about the human foods they have been given freely. There is only one deviation in all given reports, from Junior Adjutant Dr. Real, and it is not a significant deviation. His reports contain his opinion that humans seem reticent about fighting us. He has seen some of their fighter craft and ships, and states that they do have at least some degree of capability to put up a fight, though their technology is still behind ours in this regard. He mentioned something about them seeming more worried about what they would do, rather than the idea of fighting us.
Noctor's report worried me because it felt closer to what I had seen of Keith and Val. Keith was more than willing to fight the entire planet, and his threats against myself and the Dominion were deeply troubling. Something felt odd to me, though.
Do we have any hypotheses as to how they are able to make all of these predictions? It seems strange to me that they could use such little information as they have to do so much with it.
Kalrim did only a slight tilt of the head.
I believe it is related to something that the humans call lateral thinking. Rather than focusing on a single direct path, they consider around the problem. I believe this is a developed trait of humanity. It is difficult to explain, but I have a demonstration I have been working on.
On her datapad, she created a simple maze, and checking it turned the datapad to me, saying nothing. It was simple, and I adroitly drew a path through the maze. When I finished, Kalrim reached across the desk and from the starting position drew a half circle around the maze to the finish.
That is human lateral thought. Instead of taking something as it immediately looks, a human will consider multiple possibilities, including not engaging with the problem at all, and simply moving on. The problem in this case was the maze, but if it is not a requirement to go through it, then the faster solution is to go around it. A human might engage with the maze, or they might not. Whatever they personally feel is the better or more fun solution for them.
I sighed. It was all so much, and it got worse by the moment. I paused.
Well then, let's get back to the others. How are they getting stronger? And how is it related to the humans?
Kalrim brought back the medical statistics.
It started with the Rothani, the first to join the humans after the dire cougar attack. Fascinatingly, it's Valerie who is causing the initial alterations, by pinning down the dietary requirements of the various species. Even with the trials, she has taken to using a boiling system to make cleaner water for them, and has begun experimenting with nutrients that can be added to their water for increased health. As well, Keith has pushed them physically, using their natural strength to bolster his own, the reverse also being true. They have mapped the sleeping habits and necessities of all of the species they're interacting with, bringing them further into line with maximum diet and exercise, as well as medical attention from Keith. It's a collection of minor corrections and alterations, as well as making certain they have more than the required food intake, keeping them hydrated with clean water. Keith, however, is providing the drive behind it, convincing them that they are all banded together in the same cause, providing a needed element of purpose beyond survival itself.
I watched as the information continued on the display. The evidence being presented could not be argued with. While there were certainly differences, they were all certainly improving in physical health.
Marilla, in particular. Her psychological profile showed that she would attempt to assume leadership and create friction within the group. But that not only hasn't happened, but she is reporting to Val about things, conferring with her and taking orders. This is completely against the findings of our researchers. What happened?
She considered quietly a moment.
She realized the humans were smarter than her. On Vendrix, she is the most intelligent person her people have ever produced, an unrivaled genius and an ambitious genius. She was able to unite her world quickly, with no one able to keep up with her. And then, Keith. Despite his lack of formal higher education, he thinks rapidly and across multiple lines, as does Valerie. We did not account for that as a variable because we were unaware of it. It is our belief that she has encountered people for the first time who are able to keep up with her mental speed, and this has bonded her to them, but in a manner that does fit her psychological profile. She is trying to see what their limit is, where the line is, and if she can find a way to step past it.
All right, there is something I need you to do. I understand you are quite busy, but we need to research more into the humans, even past the point of standard protocols. This is of utmost importance, and anything that you find, bring to me. You are dismissed, Researcher Kalrim.
I made a quick motion for her to depart, and she bowed, heading out of my office. I could not rest. There was too much. I gathered up the data pads and submitted the research directly to the Emperor's own advisors as per protocol. Finally, I took out my vaporizer, letting the neurostims saturate my lungs. Apparently, humans had developed a number of similar devices of their own. I considered if I should requisition one to try out, but for the moment, the extra energy was more pressing. There was something we were still missing, something we hadn't caught on to, and I couldn't help but feel like there was still something waiting to drop. I looked at the preliminary prospects for Keith's trials, and it settled in as I read over them. Kalrim was right. Keith would burn down every challenge as if he were breathing. We had to increase the challenges, push it further if we didn't want to look like we didn't know what we were doing. But I hesitated to make the call. Would it really be so bad if Keith just kept taking down every challenge? And why do I care? What is so different this time? More than 1,000 episodes I had been Game Master, and not once had I hesitated with a contestant. I drew up my resolve and sent in the report, including that the trials needed to be made more challenging. This was my duty, sworn to the Emperor himself. As the reports got sent off, I could feel myself shaking and the beginnings of tears rolling down my cheeks. Why do I care? I looked to my office display of the games and saw Keith singing, strumming away, and crying himself, because I care and I don't want him to die.